When someone never posts their photos online, people instantly assume things like they're insecure, they're private, or they just don't like attention. But psychology says that's a shallow way of seeing it, because people who rarely post pictures of themselves aren't just different, they're wired differently. Their brains process validation, privacy, and social energy in a completely unique way. They're not hiding. They're choosing who gets to see them. And once you understand what's really going on in their mind, you'll realize. Not posting isn't a weakness. It's a form of psychological power. Let's break down the real psychology behind people who don't post photos, and why their silence online says everything about their depth. 1. They don't need the mirror because they already know themselves. Most people post to be seen. They post pictures to get feedback, to feel relevant, to prove they're still here. But psychology calls this the self-verification theory, the constant human urge to prove our identity through others' reactions. When you post a photo and wait for likes or comments, you're subconsciously asking, do I still matter to others? Do they still see me the way I want to be seen? But those who rarely post don't need that digital mirror. They already have internal clarity. They know who they are without reflection. They don't need 100 likes to confirm what they already feel within. Their confidence isn't performance-based, it's awareness-based. This doesn't mean they're emotionless. It means they have intrinsic self-worth, the kind of confidence that doesn't require an audience. When your validation comes from self-understanding, not social reaction, you stop performing and start existing. 2. They understand the cost of exposure. Every photo you post is more than an image. It's information, data about your emotions, your home, your surroundings, your mood, your relationships. Most people share blindly, unaware that every post builds a psychological profile. But those who choose not to post understand impression management, the science of how others form judgments based on tiny cues. They know that the more people see, the more people assume. And the more people assume, the less you control your narrative. So instead of trying to manage perception, they simply withdraw from it. Their mind operates on privacy intelligence, an awareness that the less people know, the more power you hold over your own story. They don't disappear because they're hiding. They disappear because they know attention comes with a cost. Every bit of visibility invites interpretation, and interpretation rarely equals truth. They'd rather be misunderstood in silence than misjudged in exposure. 3. They refuse to perform for the invisible crowd. There's a psychological phenomenon called the audience effect, the way your behavior changes the moment you feel observed. Even when no one is actively watching, your brain still performs. That's why people unconsciously pose, filter, and adjust themselves online. But those who rarely post don't want their life to turn into a stage. They refuse to perform for invisible spectators. Their authenticity matters more than the illusion of being liked. They understand that once your self-image is built around others' perception, you start losing your real identity, piece by piece. So they step back, not because they don't belong, but because they want to remain authentic in a world that rewards performance. Their silence is a rebellion against the constant need to be on. It's not shyness, it's psychological discipline. 4. They observe, they don't perform. In social psychology, people can generally be divided into 2 types: performers and observers. Performers are drawn to the spotlight. They crave external energy. Observers find peace in watching patterns, in understanding what drives human behavior. People who don't post much are usually observers. They analyze everything: tone, expression, behavior, energy. They're not on social media to compete for attention. They're studying it. They notice who posts to impress, who posts to cope, who posts to hide pain behind smiles. They may seem detached, but their awareness runs deep. They're mentally tracking patterns that most people overlook. Their quietness isn't a lack of interest. It's selective interest. They're not absent. They're simply paying attention differently. And that kind of awareness, that's rare and a little intimidating. 5. They value control. Over-attention psychologists talk about stimulus control, the ability to decide what emotional triggers you allow into your mind. Every notification, comment, or like is a stimulus. It activates dopamine, your brain's reward chemical. But dopamine isn't free. It teaches your brain to rely on others for satisfaction. People who don't post often have mastered the art of emotional control. They'd rather choose peace over dopamine. They know that the more you depend on external reactions, the less control you have over your emotional state. They prefer emotional independence, to be calm without needing digital applause. In a world that rewards impulsive expression, choosing silence is a sign of psychological strength. 6. They have high need for psychological safety. Everyone has boundaries, but for some, those boundaries are thicker and smarter. These individuals protect their mental energy like it's sacred. Psychologists call this psychological safety, the sense of security you feel when your emotions, thoughts, and identity are protected from judgment. People who don't post much operate in private spaces for this reason. They know that oversharing dilutes self-respect. They only open up where they feel emotionally safe, in private conversations, not public comment sections. Their circle is small because their filter is strong. They don't want exposure. They want connection. And they understand that real connection doesn't need an audience. They've chosen depth over display. 7. They're comfortable being the mystery. Most people fear being unseen. They believe visibility equals importance. But those who rarely post, they embrace invisibility. They've accepted that mystery is not isolation, it's control. By staying mysterious, they maintain one of the rarest things left in today's world: psychological freedom. They don't crave to be understood by everyone. They prefer to be understood by the few who matter. Their life doesn't need to be a highlight reel. Their silence filters out noise and leaves only authenticity. They've realized something powerful. If people need proof that you're doing well, they probably don't deserve to know. 8. They don't equate visibility with value. Social media has tricked millions into thinking visibility equals worth. If people see me, I matter. If people stop reacting, I disappear. But people who rarely post have mentally broken that illusion. They know that value isn't something you show, it's something you live. Their identity doesn't depend on being remembered by the crowd. It depends on being real when no one's watching. They've detached from the external reward system. They exist quietly, yet powerfully, because their validation system is internal. This is called intrinsic self-worth, a rare psychological state where your confidence doesn't fluctuate based on attention. They don't need the world to see them. They just need to see themselves clearly. 9. Inner motivation, not likes. Many people post for extrinsic motivation, the quick outside rewards like likes and comments, which trigger dopamine, the brain's feel-good chemical. People who rarely post rely on intrinsic motivation. Their satisfaction comes from within, from achieving personal goals, or simply enjoying an activity. They don't need that digital reward system because their inner happiness isn't controlled by outside approval. 10. Memory over documentation. When you stop an experience to take a photo, you risk experience taking, a psychological effect where the act of recording actually reduces how well your brain remembers and enjoys the event. Non-posters avoid this trade-off. They choose deep presence because they know that being fully in the moment creates much richer, more lasting memories than having a perfect photo to show later. 11. Sharing less makes it matter more. If you share everything, nothing you share feels special. This follows the law of diminishing returns applied to personal information. Private people practice information scarcity. By keeping casual details quiet, they ensure that when they do share, it carries real value and is reserved for high-trust relationships. They trade shallow, widespread visibility for real-life depth. 12. Protecting their private self. Today's world pressures people toward hyper-transparency. Those who resist are masters of boundary management. They know that a healthy sense of self requires a protected inner life, a zone that is off-limits to public judgment. This choice to keep their true self, private life, separate from their social self, online image, is a mature strategy for keeping their mental life stable and secure. In a world obsessed with being seen, those who stay unseen are often the ones who understand themselves the most. They aren't afraid of being forgotten. They're afraid of becoming fake. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's power. Their mystery isn't confusion, it's control. Because when you no longer perform for validation, you reclaim something priceless, your authenticity. So if you're one of those people who doesn't post much, you're not behind the world. You've simply outgrown its noise. If this video described you better than you could describe yourself, you belong here. Subscribe, not for motivation, but to understand the truth about the human mind. Because here, we don't just talk psychology, we decode it.